Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX with me, Devika Devan. On the occasion of World Environment Day, we turn our focus to a region facing unprecedented vulnerability. As India confronts escalating climate volatility, ecological degradation and critical infrastructural challenges across the Himalayan belt, we must start treating this not merely as an environmental concern, but as a core matter of strategic, developmental and civilizational survival. Building on a landmark closed-door multidisciplinary Himalayan roundtable convened earlier this year by the C.P. Kukreja Foundation for Design Excellence, which culminated in the Future of the Himalayas white paper launched in the presence of Chief Minister Pema Khandu, we are bringing that urgent conversation to national television. Joining us tonight is an elite panel of military, hydrological, ecological and urban planning minds. This is a NewsX special, Future of the Himalayas, Ecology, Resilience and National Imperatives. My welcome to all our guests, Lieutenant General Harpal Singh, former Engineer-in-Chief of the Indian Army, Professor A.K. Gusain, Founder and Director of INRM Consultants, Mr. Pradeep Sangwan, founder of Healing Himalayas Foundation, and Mr. Dikshu Kukreja, director of C.P. Kukreja Architects. Thank you so much to all our guests for joining us. I'd like to begin by setting some context for our viewers. So let me begin with Lieutenant General Harpal Singh. Lieutenant General Singh, in one sentence, what is the single greatest threat facing the Himalayas today?
Good evening, everyone. Honored to be on this elite panel. If I have to identify one single threat and identify it, it's the transition from predictable risks to unpredictable risks. As an engineer, for me, that is a foremost thing, that we are now in an era of unpredictable risks.
Okay. Professor A.K. Gusain, sir. Welcome to the show. I'd like to begin by getting your thoughts on the same. What is the single greatest threat facing the Himalayas today?
I think as far as my feeling is that we are going to have a drastic change in the ecological setup of the Himalayan system, which has many segments. For example, starting with having the glacier melt, which is already happening, and that has an implication of higher floods. And not only that, you'll also see that in the long run, you will lose the low flows, which are the main reason that this area, this region is the food basket of the country. And if you don't have that low flows which are coming through the snow melt and the glacier melt, that's going to change the total complexion of your this system, and it will have a very huge implication into the society.
All right, same question to Mr. Pradeep Sangwan. Mr. Sangwan, in your assessment, what is the greatest, single greatest threat today to the Himalayas?
I think it's ignorance. Primarily, we have so many topics, whether it's climate change, whether it's fast melting glaciers, whether it's urbanization, whether it's waste management, whether the community is not being participative, whether policies are not being implemented. Around all the topics that we have, it's ignorance from each and every stakeholder, from the policymakers, from the implementers, from the communities, etc. So I think that is the core of what I have understood in my previous 10 years of experience in the Himalayan region.
All right, Mr. Dikshu Kukreja, bringing you in as well. Welcome to the show. I'd like to understand from you as well, in your assessments, what is the greatest threat that's facing our mighty Himalayas?
So Devika, I would just say that it's ironical that as we have evolved as a human civilization, I think we have forgotten the might of nature, and that to me is the biggest threat. That here Himalayas functions as one natural system spreading across the range, and one part of Himalayas affects the other, while our human approach has been completely in silos. So whether it is the tourism department or the irrigation department or the infrastructure department or etc., all of us work as institutions in silos, and we fail to recognize that Himalayas needs a more integrated framework and approach. So that to me is the biggest problem.
Okay, so let's try to address this one by one, and I'd like to bring Lieutenant General Harpal Singh back into the conversation. General Singh, I want to understand from you, sir. Now, projects such as tunnels, roads, border infrastructure, they're all very essential for national security. How do we balance connectivity and strategic preparedness with the ecological realities of a very fragile mountain system, sir?
I would say that ecological fragility has become, without doubt, a major concern. Himalayas are India's first line of strategic resilience. They support border connectivity, military logistics, water security, and the livelihood of millions. Now, when ecological system weakens, strategic systems, all these strategic systems are affected. Roads, when they are cut off by landslide, they affect military mobility. A glacial outburst can damage bridges and infrastructure, critical infrastructure downstream. A very stressed watershed can affect downstream population and agriculture. Therefore, ecological security is no longer separate from our national security. In the 21st century and the years to come, I guess the nations will increasingly be judged not only by the strength of the infrastructure, but by the resilience of the ecosystem that supports the entire infrastructure.
Lieutenant General Singh, what would you say about the current engineering and infrastructure standards, sir? Do they then adequately address some of these concerns that you've raised?
In terms of the current engineering standards, see, our engineering capability is excellent. We are one of the top in the world as far as capability and the knowledge of engineering is concerned. But our standards, which are applied to this engineering, they need to evolve faster than the risks. Today, we have access to technology that were unimaginable a decade ago. We have LiDAR mapping, we have satellite monitoring, we have real-time slope instrumentation. Drone-based surveys have come in a big way. Use of artificial intelligence, which result in predictive analytics. And of late, physical intelligence has also come in. It's still very nascent in the world, but once the physical intelligence comes in, all these technology parameters which I have just listed, they will be speaking to each other. Now the question is whether technology is systematically integrated into the planning and project execution in India. I would say to a very limited extent. Therefore, the future of Himalayan engineering lies in digital monitoring and predictive maintenance. We must move from reactive engineering to anticipatory or predictive engineering. That's my take on this issue.
Okay, interesting. Professor Gusain, bringing into the conversation, so I want to address a little bit about water security with you. Are the Himalayan river systems likely to become more volatile before they become water scarce? And what does that truly mean for India's long-term water security, sir?
Yes, I think I'll take this into two parts. One is without the implication of the climate change. If you look at these systems, which are all the Himalayan systems, and for that matter, all the systems of the country, all the basins, river basins, as a mankind, we have been imposing much more demand on these systems than they can afford to give you as a natural resource, water resources. So we had analyzed the Ganga system while doing the Ganga River Basin Management Plan, and we were aghast to see that even the systems like Ganga, which are supposed to have so much water, when you look at the groundwater, we have been mining so much groundwater that the groundwater table is going down in the systems like Ganga and the other Indus systems, to the extent that they are now influencing the natural hydrological processes, you are losing water to the groundwaters in those rivers, which are there are stretches where the groundwater table is much lower than the river bed. So the water is being lost to the groundwater from the rivers and they are getting dry. And we had identified which are the stretches of the Ganga which are getting dried during the non-monsoon period on account of that. So I think that is something which is totally anthropogenic, is the man-made implication, man-made disaster which has been built into the systems. We have to address that, and that's what Mr. Kukureja was saying, that if we are to address these systems, we have to take an integrated approach, where we have to first understand what we have done to the system, which is losing its natural behavior. And then the climate change can be imposed on top, which are more than the existing behavior which you have made it lose on account of our actions. And first we have to address those issues which are on account of our own actions, and then we can cope up to the climate change implications in a much better manner. We cannot have a total complete, I'll say that the control on that. You will have to find out which are the good adaptation options to take care of the climate change implications, and you have to differentiate between good adaptation options and the bad adaptation options, as that is a major requirement in front of the country. And I think that is where, unless we start scientifically understanding these systems in a manner where we first look at what is the resource availability overall and how much demand we are imposing, and then on top of that we can look at that how much is the variation on account of the climate change, then that can be addressed in a manner which can have the minimum kind of the disadvantage to the society. But when we look at the big basins, is a very big macro level basin. We have to look at the smaller areas which have changes in behavior in terms of their behavior to the natural system, because I think the most important is that we had also recommended that hydrology is what we as a nation, we say that it should be resolved at the basin level, but the actions are always at the local level, at the administrative level, at the district level.
Yes.
So we had come out with the mechanism that how you can do the interpolation and come out with the strategy that what is the water which is for this to be secure, how much is the water which can be used by a particular district, and the district magistrate should look at all the policies which are around the water and try to see that how much they are overdoing in terms of imposing more demand. So I think we have to find out ways and means by which you can resolve and enhance the water security across these systems, which are very big systems, most of them.
Okay, and coming to another very critical aspect, I want to bring in Mr. Pradeep Sangwan on this. Mr. Sangwan, I want to address tourism with you, because ultimately tourism does sustain local economies, but it's also placing enormous pressure on the fragile mountain system. So how do we move from mass tourism to responsible tourism? Is that truly even possible? And what would be your recommendations to the administration on this front?
I really thought that after COVID, the mass tourism or the mass destinations might be converted into decentralized sort of tourism. People might find villages as tourism new hotspots, but that never happened, and we never thought of that. How do we, create value over volume? Because that was, that is one of the most fundamental way forward when we talk about responsible tourism. One thing that has changed in the last many years is that how fast we have become. The pace has increased so much. Whether we talk about the development, whether we talk about urbanization, whether we talk about people going outdoors, trekking, traveling, exploring new destinations abroad, in our country itself. But the space of, the management around it has never picked up. And that is the sad reality as of now. When we go to a remote village and we talk about waste management, it's a very alien concept to so many people. Responsible tourism was there, in earlier times, back in time. People knew how to, handle incoming tourists in a particular village. They used to establish certain rules that this is my home, my village, and you have to follow certain rules. But as we progress, we are losing those values. And that's one of the most saddest part of the growth that we see today. And we follow a lot of lot from urban spaces, and we introduce those habits into the rural spaces because tourism bring those habits to a certain destination. So these are certain aspects that's really have been bothering me. But at the same time, while we try and implement certain or give certain solutions, it's very difficult for people to adapt immediately. The good path, the righteous path, is always difficult to sort of walk on and introduce, and that's the sad reality of where we are today.
Okay, I want to bring in Mr. Dikshu Kukreja then in on this aspect as well. When we talk about urbanization, let's build on that aspect in development. Mr. Kukreja, Joshimath, let's take that example for just a moment. It's believed that there was not simply a natural disaster or a geological anomaly, but it was a planning failure. What are some of the lessons then that we must learn, and we must learn them immediately?
So I would say that, we need to change our mindset. And the problem is that we are looking at developing the mountains. You also use the term urbanize. I would say that rather than trying to urbanize the Himalayan belt, we need to modernize those towns. And there's a difference between the two. And where does the difference come in? It is about our thinking. What is currently happening, and I've been doing projects across the Himalayan range from Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh all the way to Arunachal. And what I find is that the aspirations of the policymakers tends to be driven out of Delhi, driven out of the plains. First and foremost, we need to understand that we are not designing for the plains. We are not taking Delhi to the mountains. We are designing for the mountains, and that has a different thought process. For example, even when you build a road in Delhi, it has its ramifications. When you build a road in the mountains, what does it do? It impacts the drainage, how the water is coming down the mountain. The drainage has an impact on the soil's slope stability. The slope stability has an impact on the settlements, and the settlements have an impact on tourism. Where there will be settlement, tourism will go there. So one thing leads to another, and we need to understand that. Therefore, the kind of planning model, and to respond to what happened in Joshimath, we are overbuilding and over-densifying areas, thinking that that's progress. It's not. It's a recipe for disaster. We need to have compact developments in the mountains. We have to have not mega infrastructure, large water pipes for supply, large electrical power stations, waste management centers. You need them all, but you need them small and scattered. And last but not the least, you cannot build roads and tunnels everywhere in the Himalayas. There are ways of doing mobility in the mountains, which means you go with policies like developing ropeways. You have other modes of electric vehicles. I just returned from Italy, from the Amalfi coast, where there are towns like Capri, Positano, again all hill towns. You don't have vehicles running through the towns. You have policies where vehicles stop, and then you have pedestrianization. So there are many aspects which need to come together in terms of planning frameworks, in terms of policy guidelines, and unless that is there, we are going to be creating Joshimath-like situations, because these are policies emanating, like I said earlier, from silos. They are not looking at the Himalayas in totality. They are not understanding the ecology, the hydrology, the climate of the, and of course, the sensitivity of how mountains and mountain planning is supposed to be.
But Mr. Kukreja, if you could just build on that a little bit, what does then a truly mountain-specific development model look like?
So I would say mountain-specific development, General Harpal Singh used the term predictive engineering. I would add on to that. I think that's a very important point he made, that we need to have contextual engineering. We need, there's a lot of data out there. We are not using that data. For example, when we talk about tourism, which you just asked the other panelist, Pradeep Sangwan, about it, of course we need tourists to go to these areas because that's a road to prosperity for the local residents there. But today you can, and rather than specifying fixed numbers that you can have X number of people visit this hill town, it is an evolving rapid situation. With technology today, you can have flexibility. For example, if you are ending up having suddenly a large number of tourists coming into a place, you can go ahead with diverting the traffic from there. You can have restrictive passes which are issued. It's literally like, I would say, how an airport is designed. An airport is designed to filter, to take care of varying passenger movements, passenger flows. The same way a hill town needs to be designed in a manner that you are going to evolve and control and bring in, kick in policies depending on the influx of people that are coming there. The other important thing is we are building mega projects in these hills, unnecessarily so. What needs to happen is small, compact development. We are thinking when you go to the Himachal, the Uttarakhand and all these areas, you know, they are trying to build on these aspirations of creating buildings which they see in Delhi, Gurgaon or Mumbai. That's not what is supposed to be there. You need to understand the local traditional systems of how buildings were built, whether it was on stilts so that the water could still run down, you don't disturb the flow of the water. These basic things, we think when we talk about them, planners like us, we are categorized as if you're romanticizing the past. No, we want to use modern technology, but whatever was sensible interventions or technologies which were built in the past, they should still be inculcated in the design and planning, which is not happening. Why do we take pride that we can reach Dehradun in 2.5 hours? Do we really need to do so? What is so important in reaching Dehradun in 2.5 hours and making 8-lane or 6-lane highways there? It's not necessary. Yes, I understand where national security comes in, you need interventions. But reaching a hill town in 2.5 hours, what is this achievement? We don't need to do those kind of things. So I think there is a mindset which is not yet geared towards how you build in the mountains, how you respond to the nature and character of the mountains. That integrated approach is extremely important, that needs to come. Otherwise, we are destroying something which is never going to be built again or can be repaired again.
All right, as we move to the end of this conversation, very interesting perspectives there from all our guests. But one last common question I'll open up to everyone, 30 seconds to each speaker. Let me begin once again with Lieutenant General Harpal Singh. Lieutenant Singh, what is, sir, the single most important action India must take in the next 5 years to secure the future of the Himalayas?
I would say the single most important action that India must take in the next 5 years is to establish a national Himalaya resilience mission. The Himalayas are now currently being addressed through multiple programs relating to water, infrastructure, disaster management, climate adaptation, and tourism. All of these are important. All of these are being addressed individually by different ministries. That is good for rest of the country. But the next stage requires a very, very integrated mission that brings together science, engineering, governance, technology, community participation under one strategic framework. In a nutshell, the objective should not simply be protecting the Himalayas, but the objective should be to building resilience across the Himalayan system, so that we enjoy the fruits of the Himalayan as an ecosystem, and also at the same time we are protecting the Himalayas.
All right, Professor Gusain, same question to you, sir, 30 seconds.
In my view, I think when we say that yes, integration should take place, the most difficult part is that what to integrate. Where are the databases? Where are the frameworks which are conducive for integration? So I think I'll give the top priority to really all that what we are saying, to put them into databases, into the frameworks which then can be looked at in conjunction by all the experts, and they have to sit together to really look at from their own domain and try to address that space, that what needs to be done, which is the best option available for that particular the objective which we are going with. So I think that is the most difficult part, but is doable. And those kind of data, when we say data, they are very generic. There are platforms available these days which can make it. You can have tools which are already there, but they are all segmented. We need to put those tools with the objective of doing the integration with a view which we all of us converge on, that it has to be looked at from every aspect, and then you have to find out which is the best option available under the circumstances to take action with a particular specific objective in mind. So I think that will work in the long run, and then you can keep on addressing the same framework by posing all those changing circumstances, whether it's social or whether it's natural, whether it's the climate change implications. All those things can be then viewed through that platform, and you can converge by putting all those specialists together and make them help through this particular framework to come out with the best options. Thank you.
Mr. Pradeep Sangwan, same question to you, sir.
Two things actually. I just came back from Kedarnath yesterday, and in first 40 days, there has been a footfall of roughly 10 lakh pilgrims in just 40 days. Last year, throughout the year, it was 17 lakhs. So every year, the number of pilgrims are increasing, which we can see. And this showcases that roughly between 250 tons to 400 tons of waste has been generated throughout the yatra. So that's very alarming. So the measure of success should not be the footfall in a particular destination, number one. And how do we change that mindset? Number two is, I think I agree with Mr. Harpal here, that we need to create a separate entity who can represent Himalayas, its ecosystem, who's been living and breathing Himalayas all their life. They can work parallelly with MAHUA and MOFCC departments like that, so that we have separate policies and separate representations, that how do we take forward this mission of making Himalayas most sustainable ecosystem.
All right, Mr. Kukreja, last word to you.
I would also concur that, Himalayas, after all, is one living system, and it needs one integrated approach which brings together the different aspects that have to be looked at, like we've all discussed already: hydrology, geology, climate scientists, the communities, the local communities, engineering practices, etc. They all need to come together. So there needs to be a national framework and guidelines established for that. And we have to go beyond these political boundaries or administrative boundaries between one state to the next, or one department, let's say a water department or a forest department or a transport department. It has to move beyond that, and there has to be a more holistic approach towards looking at development in the Himalayas, because we must realize that what you do in one slope or one valley of the Himalayas, the results come up somewhere else. What you do, let's say, upstream, the result comes something else downstream. So it's very, very integrated and interrelated, and therefore the approach that we must have also needs to be about breaking these silos, destroying them, and really having some national framework and guidelines to address the Himalayan development.
Well, very interesting perspectives there from all our guests, and the big takeaway from tonight's discussion is quite clear, viewers. The Himalayas are often discussed as an environmental issue, but after this conversation, we should be viewing them as a question of national resilience, one that encompasses ecology, water security, infrastructure, livelihoods, culture, and long-term strategic stability. The clock is truly ticking. Thank you to all of our guests for bringing this matter to our attention, and thank you for watching.